And if you can find an edge to beat the market, there is huge upside. So having that analytical, mathematical brain that can understand gambling, it's a very rare skill set, but if you've got that, there's big upside.
Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Relentless Life on Your Terms. I have a very special guest with me, someone I was very interested in talking to, Tom Waterhouse. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be on.
Now, I've heard it said many times before, as you have fourth generation, been in punting, bookmaking. You've got a very famous family. The Waterhouse name's a very prestigious name when it comes to sports betting. Tell us a bit about that story, that journey for your family, and then obviously to you and to your purchase of your business, being the CEO. Tell us a bit about that journey. Yeah,
look, so I grew up in a family just very hard workers. My mum gets up at 2:05 every morning, and she did ever since I was a little kid. My dad gets up around 3 to do the form, and so they just worked really hard. Go to bed very late. They'd be out most till 9:30. Get up at 2. It's not much sleep, and it was always about horse racing. I used to complain all the time as a kid, do you guys ever talk about anything besides horses? And I used to work for my mum at the stables every Sunday from the age of 12, and then every holidays for at least a week or two every holidays, going to track work and stuff like that. And I thought it was the worst thing in the world. Hated it. And couldn't understand why they were so obsessed with this industry. And then sort of a few months into my first year at university, I was studying commerce at Sydney Uni. My dad said, look, do you want to come and help me at the races as a clerk? He was a bookie. And I got there and I just fell in love with it. It was like a trading floor of the futures exchange or something at the stock market, and so much money flying through people's hands and people betting big. And I just became obsessed. And then from that moment on, I never stopped living and breathing betting.
At that point, you understood what the obsession was.
Yeah, I just, and now my mum complains, do you guys ever stop talking odds and sods? And it was really a big change. But it just clicked.
And I've heard you speak about the importance of work ethic and seeing your parents work so hard. And once you see that as a kid, my parents come from overseas in Cyprus, and I've seen that instilled in me as well. It actually changes the way you think about work and the way you approach your work, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're obsessed with what they do, and it's not a job, it's just a way of life. And both grandfathers were the same. I remember I worked with my grandfather Bill, who's Rob's father, and he was in the office 7 days a week. We had an amazing relationship together because my dad said to me a few things when we started. He goes, look, I think you should be a bookie at the Dogs because then you don't have the benefit of my form. So I started out as a bookie at the Greyhounds, which was great. And then he also said to my grandfather, look, you need to come out of retirement at the age of 80 and teach my son, your grandson, all the things that you've learned, because my grandfather was the biggest bookie in the world in the 60s and 70s. And so I had the privilege to work with my dad, who's a form genius. He's been a professional punter for the last 40 plus years, never had a losing quarter. So he's mathematically gifted. And then my grandfather, who's this huge bettor, entrepreneur, big thinker. And so I had the benefit of seeing these two different styles. And my grandfather, Bill, he used to dress up as Santa Claus as a kid, and we used to play tennis and go and with our water pistols running around the park. So I knew him as a friendly grandfather, that cuddly, just warm grandfather, but he was hard and tough at the races. And he was brutal on me, absolutely brutal. But it was fantastic because I needed probably someone that was very hard on me and honest. And we had just blazing arguments every day going back in the car from the races. But he was right about basically everything. And it was a great learning period, these early 20s, working with my dad, grandfather, and at the Dogs. It was really good.
I heard you speak about that was really defining for you, and you loved working with him so much, all those lessons, and you had someone like your father who was very, very good with numbers, and you had your grandfather who was a big thinker, and you've been able to merge those two into the way that you do business as well.
Yeah, look, I had a few things going for me. I luckily had my dad's form as a bookie, and I had basically my dad and my grandfather gave me a blueprint of how to be a bookie. And then at the same time, the bankroll, so you could bet big, attract customers. And also I moved to Melbourne in 2008. And in Melbourne, you were allowed to offer a few products you couldn't offer in New South Wales. And also you had the benefit of looking at Betfair. You couldn't access the internet on course in New South Wales at the time. So I had access to Betfair, which was like seeing what price they were taking the stock market, and off you could see what was happening in the exchange, and other bookies couldn't. So that was a big advantage. And you could offer products like Best Tote to your customers from New South Wales. So 2008, the business really took off, and was turning over sort of $300 million a year as an on-course bookie. And it was really great. And I thought, gosh, I hope I'm doing this the rest of my life. But then it all changed in 2009. 2008, they changed the advertising laws, which allowed online bookmakers to advertise. And by 2009, the real shift had happened. And so turnover dramatically decreased on course. And I realized I had to go online. And that was the beginnings of tomwaterhouse.com.
Which obviously you then grew, you scaled, you built, you sold it to William Hill as well.
Correct. Yeah, that was a great learning experience because obviously we had been as a family on-course bookies, and my dad had online betting experience through CamBet and run a professional betting syndicate. But this mass market, they're really tech businesses and online experience and customer engagement, all of this sort of stuff. We went from 3 people to 110 people working the team in Moonee Ponds, and
in a very short period.
Very short period, in less than 18 months. And we went from 100 customers to $250,000 in 18 months. So it was a really fast growing business, and we learned a lot. Basically, it was just a roller coaster. And you had the likes of Paddy Power, William Hill, Bet365, Ladbrokes come into the market, and the cost to do business dramatically increased. And so we had to find a partner, and we sold to William Hill in 2013. They did a roll-up of Sporting Bet business, Centre Bet business, and tomwaterhouse.com business. And then maybe a year after they bought the business, they asked me to be CEO of that company. And so I ran that from 2014 to 2018, which again was a really interesting experience because it was a multinational, part of a multinational business, and had $2.5 billion turnover, 500 people in the team. And we had offices in Tel Aviv, Philippines, all over Australia, New Zealand. So it was a different beast. And I really enjoyed that, from being part of a family business, an on-course bookmaker, and a startup, to see how large corporation operates was really interesting.
I love that you kept writing all your suggestions. I said, why don't you just come and be the CEO when you're writing all your ideas?
Well, we were in an earnout at the time, and I just was like, obviously from a selfish point of view.
And it was a lot of money. It was 70 odd million in the year over the last 2 years, wasn't it?
So we had big upside if we got it right. So basically, it was more from a selfish point of view. This is what I would be doing if we're trying to accelerate the business
and give me my 70K
and hit the numbers. And I think the benefit, and maybe why they chose me to do it, obviously I kept writing to the global headquarters saying this is how I think the business should be run and what to do. And having tomwaterhouse.com, you had to do all of the little bits because we're going from startup. So you had to understand a bit about marketing, and a bit about digital marketing, and a bit about trading, and a bit about how customer engagement, and finance. And so you had to be a jack of all trades, where a lot of the people that they had in a large corporation, they'd been in finance 15 years or marketing 15 years. They were in one area, and they're obviously really good at that area. Some of the executives they had, but they hadn't seen all different bits. And
they didn't have a balanced skill set that
they
was
hadn't
required.
seen the overall business. It's hard to get, when you're in a big corporation, a view of the whole business because you're normally in one particular department. And so they had to bring these 3 businesses together, and I'd been through the process of having to do all of these little bits so I could talk to why, the product, like the head of product or the head of trading was so important to why it linked in with finance, or why it was so important for marketing that it understands what product's doing, or just how it all connected. And the way that I wrote to them and talked to them about how it was very much a connected business. It's not a silo. Marketing decides to go and spend X amount of dollars. It's, well, what's trading doing and how can we use that in marketing, and what are we building product wise, and how are we going to give a better customer experience, and how does that link in? You sort of know how these connect a bit more when you've had to do all of them from startup. And so I think that was, I don't know why they chose me, but I think that's probably why.
It's very interesting. It actually makes me, I was in real estate for many, many years. And I left the real estate industry for a year so I can become a mortgage broker, because it was the second part of my process. And I went to understand it for that reason. I was in lead generation beforehand, so I understood the value of a lead. I sold real estate, but I was handing them over to a broker to that first stage. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go off for a year just so I can know broking as much. So each area of my business, I physically worked in for 6 to 12 months or more so I can understand it, so I can link them together for that reason.
Yeah, I think it's very bad. And I know what I'm doing now is, I definitely wouldn't be able to do it if I hadn't had that experience in startup and running William Hill's business here in Australia, because understanding how these big corporations work and how these smaller businesses work and how they link together, well, you just don't know until you're in it. And that's been, really valuable.
And I guess for in 4 years, you obviously worked very, very hard. You built this business. You did exit, and I read you somewhere, you said it was bittersweet. Yes, it was a good amount of money. You committed so hard to build that brand, but you were fortunate enough to be able to get your name back as well, Tom Waterhouse.
Yeah. So that was great. And yeah, it was a great journey. William Hill was a really interesting journey, and I think what was so valuable is understanding how these large groups work, understanding how they leverage off their global business. So the skill sets that you can access, well, for instance, we had a team, a couple of hundred people in the Philippines. Like we had a team of probably 50 people in Tel Aviv, like understanding how these like different parts of the world, you can utilize the skill sets across the world. And I think also access to talent, because when you're coming from startup, you're like, I know I need to get here, but who are the people that I need to help me get there?
What's the skill set that I need to hire?
Correct.
And employ?
And William Hill had 16,000 people working for it. And once you're in that group, you actually know you start to meet all the people in those other big organizations and how it works. And access to talent and people is really important. If you've got a great idea, you need the people to drive it.
To execute it, to be able to put it together.
And so that gave me I sort of just knew my family's friends and my schoolmates and my uni mates, and maybe use a recruiter, but it really opened up that it's a global industry, and everyone you work with, all the good ones have gone on to go and do amazing things. It's incredible. I was in Melbourne last week for the Cup, and I bumped into a lot of people I was part of TomWaterhouse.com with, and William Hill, and just seeing what amazing things they've done in their career. That contact base is, as you get older, but also working in bigger organizations, that contact base is much bigger, and
which helps your network to be able to do a number of other different things. So you're now obviously doing a Tom Waterhouse VC. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so look, I had a 2-year non-compete when William Hill sold their business in Australia, and the area that it really shifted, what happened was everyone was spending a fortune on marketing, TV, radio, newspaper, and so on, and then it shifted to digital. And then their differentiation really started to shift to customer experience and what product innovation you had. So whether it was Bet with Mates or Cash Out or Click to Call or whatever the new product was. And the product was one, first of all, come in and try our new product. We've got this great Cash Out product. But secondly, it was all about retention, because it gave you a better customer experience. You're like, actually, I love that. I want to keep betting because I love that product on there. They give me great bonus. They have the best odds. They have the best form. They have the best vision. And you're creating an environment that gives them very little reason to leave. And so the shift in mindset of these large businesses was, we're going to do blast all with a big marketing campaign about our brand, to actually, let's make the customer experience fantastic. Now, to make the customer experience fantastic, they need to introduce new product, and it's all around technology. And so I saw with William Hill, everything was a fight to get these external product providers into our ecosystem, our platform. And so I thought, well, actually, there's a lot of analysts out there studying what the value of Tabcorp is, or Caesars, or MGM, whether one should be 8 times earnings, 12 times earnings, 15 times earnings. That's not my skill set. I haven't done anything to do really with finance since uni. And can I analyze whether Tabcorp's value at 50 cents or $1? I don't.
Yeah.
But understanding these tech providers, these smaller companies that provide some service, technology service to the gambling ecosystem, we can probably be quite good at understanding, is that product good and would operators want it? And also, how likely is that product to get into the ecosystem of a Caesars or a Tabcorp or a Sportsbet? And so we started Waterhouse VC basically just focused on investing in the technology layer to the gambling sector. And so I've got a handful of the best developers that I worked with and over the years and said, look, we're just going to go and analyze the tech in the industry and see if there's good investments. And we put some money into our first investment. And as part of that investment, we got an option to buy 19.9% of the company. And the company grew rapidly and we suddenly had a valuable option. And I hadn't looked at options, or I didn't really know anything about options. But I realized pretty quickly that was a very good way to get large upside when you get it right. And so what we did, that combined with interest rates going up, these businesses were struggling to get funded, and we went to them and said, look, we'd like to buy an option in your business for 3 years to buy 20%. And really what we're doing, we have teams now going around the world to all the gaming conferences. So last week our team was in Cyprus, the week before in Dubai, Amsterdam, Georgia, Rio, New York, New Jersey, just going basically to every gambling conference there is, and speed dating and meeting after meeting, meeting tech suppliers and really trying to understand whether they have, let's say, a product in Eastern Europe that has one contract. Can they take their business, which supplies, let's say, esports odds or racing data or racing form guides or vision or a voice betting solution? Can they take that piece of technology and will that be able to scale into the US or into Brazil or into Hong Kong or Australia or the UK? And if we think that it can grow, then we think it's going to be worth a lot more than it is today.
And you take an option for 3 years.
We take an option for 3 years.
Using your...
Up to 20%. And so that's worked out really well for us. And we've had, great success over the years. And we just basically put our head down and keep trying to find great technology businesses that we think they've got something really good, but they don't know how to
monetize it or scale it.
Correct. And I saw this with TomWaterhouse.com is we had a brand that was known in this market and we knew bookmaking, but I didn't have a blueprint of how to take this brand and bookmaking business to be a large global corporate. I didn't know what the cost per acquisition we should be trying to aim for. I didn't know how to retain customers. I didn't know all the onboarding emails. I didn't know how to make sure they're engaged at every step of the life cycle. And when they churn, how to get them back and all of the stuff that you sort of know once you've been through it. And a lot of these businesses, they have something special, but they haven't got the ability yet to go from here to here.
They need that resource, that experience.
We don't take any active management role. We don't get into the business, but by buying the option in the business, that gives them the ability to say, oh, we've done a deal with Waterhouse VC and we've got a now significant investor base that's in the industry. They hear about them and it definitely gives them credibility, I feel, in the space.
Of course, that puts weight around. They've got
Correct.
that name behind them. So I know it's a hard question to answer. What are you looking for? What's that thing that stands out? Is it scalable? Will a big brand adopt this technology? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Is the founder a great founder? Can he drive this? What are the key aspects to...
So it's a mix of both. What are the operators looking for? Okay, let's go and try and solve that problem. And if we come across a business, they've got something, does what they provide solve an issue or create some type of growth for the operators? And like, I'll give you an example, and both these things haven't taken off, but this sort of was our thinking is that obviously PASPA in America was repealed that allowed the states to decide whether they're going to allow online sports betting in 2018. So the largest economic nation in the world just allowed sports betting, allowed the states to decide. And so you had state after state opening up sports betting, but not every state opening up gaming. So let's say there's 40 states with sports betting, there's only 8 states with gaming. Now, sports betting in America, NFL, NBA, baseball, it doesn't go all year round, so you haven't got product all the time. So we're like, well, they need product to bet on because in majority of the states, they haven't got gaming like pokies and like roulette and all the casino games. They haven't got those in those other states. So how are they going to fill where their customers have got stuff to do when the sports aren't on?
Understand.
So we're like, well, maybe racing takes off there. It's a filler product. Like it's very popular here because it's on wall to wall. So we did a deal with a few racing data providers and it did an option in them. We're like, well, maybe esports is a much younger demographic, but you can have it on all the time. It's popular to some demographic. Maybe that will take off. So we did a deal for data providers in esports for providing odds. Now, both those things haven't taken off to the extent we thought they would, but we're sort of going, okay, what are the operators going to need? What are the things that are going to solve the problems? And what are the best ones in those areas that we think are the most likely to succeed? And that's sort of our thinking is, but we're not always right. And that's why the option strategy is great, because if we get it wrong, it's minimal downside. But if we get it right, we can really get it right. And that's...
And I've heard you speak about that before. Now, obviously, you've got 3 little ones as well. You're married.
Yep.
So how do you mix it all? How do you keep it all going together? Obviously, you're a hard worker. You come from a family that works 7 days a week,
Yep.
up early.
I think I sort of feel when you're busy, you can get everything all done. You know, you're energized. You're like, I have to do this. I have to do this. And it works. Anytime I've sort of gone, oh, well, I've got heaps of time or whatever, I'll just put that back. And I love being busy. I love having a goal, like aiming to grow a business and get to a certain point and trying to achieve like certain things. It doesn't have to be anything grand. It's just your internal, like, oh, I'm here now and I want to get to here. And I sort of think about that, whether it's in business or like family or whatever, you know, it's, but having a family is unbelievably, I found for me, it's just such a great experience, but also it's great for work as well because
Grounds you.
Yeah, it grounds you. You're just focused. But
Different purpose.
Yeah, and kids are now great age. My daughter's eldest daughter's 11, and my son's 9, and youngest daughter's 6. They're getting to a good age where they're just fun.
They're like my boy. I've got a 21-year-old son.
Yep.
11-year-old daughter.
Yep.
8-year-old daughter.
Oh, cool.
7-year-old daughter.
Oh my gosh, very good.
So yeah. You talk about keeping busy and stuff. Yeah, we definitely do that. Now you said something I had to ask you about because I've always loved betting. I've more been a table player, not really online sports betting. You said 25% is only online.
So basically the breakup in Australia is the latest report was, and we always estimated from previous reports it was less than this, is there's, call it 20-25% is sports betting and racing.
Yep.
And over that portion of the gambling dollar, only more than half of it now is online. But 75% or 80% of the gambling loss in Australia is casino, pokies, slots, lottery, is all the casino products. Now, those casino products are not allowed online in Australia. They're prohibited. So, obviously people can find ways around.
Like poker stars and that, or moving it overseas where you can
find ways to get around that online, and that's obviously an issue because that's going to offshore operators that aren't taxed and all that sort of stuff. But this is Australia's a bit of an unusual market. Well, it's unusual compared to the UK, where in the UK majority is online and the majority of the turnover online is on casino products. In Australia,
on casino products. What sort of percentage would it be? Is it more than half?
I'd say, and I haven't looked at this lately, but I would say 70 to 80% is casino products, and of the 20% that's sport and racing, it's like 70% sport, or to 80% sport, 20% racing, and of the sport, the majority is in-play sports rather than live sports, rather than pre-match sports. Now, I haven't looked at the data lately, so just take that with a grain of salt, what I said. But in terms of in Australia, you're only allowed to bet online pre-match, and you're only allowed to bet on racing online. So pre-match sport and racing. You're not allowed to bet once a game started online live, which is where the majority of the sports turnover is in the UK. Wow. And the majority of the turnover in the UK is on casino products online. You're only allowed to do that, obviously, in a licensed premises like a casino or an RSL or something like that, pubs and clubs. In Australia, you're not allowed to bet online.
It always fascinated me because I thought, what's the adoption rate going to be? Is it going to keep increasing online? I imagine it would.
Yeah, globally, we've seen it's just like with most industries, it's dramatically shifting online because, as you know yourself, nearly everything. Well, we haven't got a crowd of people watching us. It's just going to be online, isn't it? And you do, whether it's your banking to your chatting with your mates to looking for a new car to a hotel, is now nearly all online, isn't it? So, yeah, it's I think where regulations allow it, there is a massive shift to online adoption. And I think where regulations don't allow it, it's hard to stop the leakage to online anyway because there's that demand.
Now, I was going to ask you, obviously, you've ran a few companies and you said you like to keep, you've ran some massive companies with hundreds of employees, and you've also had where you've seen a small amount of people because you find it a lot better to grow a brand or product.
Yep.
I think you said 8 to 10 or a smaller team.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
Look, I found it, and I don't know much about this company, and I only think I saw one interview with that Evan Spiegel with Snapchat, but he was offered like $1 billion and he had like, I forget the number, but it was like 10 employees. And I was like, it was a real brain explosion for me at the time. I was like, that's incredible. And you've seen now the shift with technology. I just know from when we started tomwaterhouse.com what was needed 15 years ago to now. If you want to set up your site using like, I don't know, automated tools to create your website, to your like wallet, to like getting it, you can do it in like I'm guessing in minutes, maybe an hour, and you can have a full functioning site that actually takes deposits, sells a product. And you're seeing with AI now that like you can ask, oh, well, I want to create this website that does this, give me all the code. And so automation is allowed you to scale certain types of businesses dramatically with far less people. And I think my focus at the moment is surrounding myself with great people that are like excellent but a smaller team, and trying to use the technology as much as possible, because I found in a large corporation it's very time consuming. It's a real and the bigger you get, the more layers of problems you
Red
get outside,
bureaucracy, all that stuff.
Outside of just getting the business going, because it's like a big ship. You've got to get everyone on the same page and aligned with the priorities and objectives of the overall company. It's if you've got a team of like 6 people and 8 people, you just get in the office and go like, guys, this is what we're doing. Let's get going. What do you think about this? It's very easy. If you've got a team of 500, it's layer of layer of layer. Look, this is why we're going. This is where we're the
management
journey.
Report, board.
It's just and there's some people that love that and are amazing at it. To me, I like being in a small, nimble, fast-moving team. I think it's just the skill set that you either have or you prefer. But yeah, it's
definitely easier when you surround yourself with people. You pay them more money because they're very skilled in whatever job they are, as opposed to working with hundreds of people.
Yeah, it's look, but some of the biggest companies in the world and greatest leaders in the world can manage
thousands and thousands of people.
1,000 and do it really well. And that's what excites them. I like being in a small team of people I really know really well and being really nimble and focused.
So what's next for the VC fund and Tom Waterhouse?
Look, so we feel like we understand one area of the gambling sector really, really well, and we're just going to put our head down. Been doing it for the last 5.5 years. Just keep doing what we're doing. We love understanding what the new technology and innovation is, and feel that we've got a formula or a way we do structure a deal that's great for the people and businesses we're coming across, but also great for us and our investors. And we'll just keep our head down and keep doing it.
Now, lastly, before we get into our quick fire questions, give me a couple of your biggest learnings throughout your journey.
Revenue leading costs. So being like nimble enough that you can pivot, because you can do everything operationally correct and be like working like so hard and have your team dedicated and focused, but there's all these things you can't quite see that are hitting you from all different directions. And it might be competitors, regulatory change, macro environment, whether interest rates, or like you saw some businesses through COVID that you thought they were going to take over the world. Interest rates just suddenly changed. Only And they suddenly went from being valued on a revenue multiple to can't get any funding, can't deliver on their plan. So everything changes. And there's so many things and factors that you're not able to control. And so being nimble and agile and having the ability where you're not pulled down by massive cost and debt allows you to pivot to all types of conditions. So
manage your expenses.
Yeah, manage your expenses, but be nimble that you can move quickly. Like there's some businesses that are profitable, but they just can't adapt and evolve. Like every time I'm like, oh, this business can go great. There's stuff that happens and you're fine. If you can pivot and go and just pivot to be, we're going to be slightly different and do this, you're fine. Where if you're bogged down and you're like, actually, I'm stuck on just this one path,
you're in trouble. You
may do amazingly well, but there's factors outside your control all the time. Look, I think you've got to have an edge. Like I sort of think, well, you've got to understand something really well, be able to structure things where you have an edge and get outsized return, So you've got to, and focus on areas that are ultra high growth. My dad said to me when I was a kid, he goes, you want to be in industries where there's a lot of money changing hands because some of them may stick. You want to be, and I remember that Jeff Bezos, he's like, I'm going to look for not industries that are growing 8% or 12%.
Rising tide ones that are
Yeah, I want to go look at the business industries growing at 1,000%. And in the gambling sector, it's $1 trillion industry, but there's some bits of it that are not growing, that are going backwards. And then there's some bits that have been growing really well for the last 15 years that are growing now at single digit. And there's some businesses in the gambling sector that are growing at hundreds of percent.
Which is tech and AI, which is what you're thinking?
So you're seeing like some of the major betting syndicates that have adapted this new technology, they're growing it massively. And you're seeing some of the large crypto global operators that have found a new way to market, new way to accept payments, new way to have customer experience, have used a lot of the streaming tools and influencers. They've changed the game in the gambling sector. So they are growing hugely. So there's parts that, and I think the areas to focus on in any industry is where is the growth? Where is it going to? Because I love being an on-course bookmaker, but I might have held $6 million in Derby Day 15 years ago, and probably half of that was in cash. If I was there as a bookie on Derby Day, I'd probably be lucky to hold 60,000. So yeah. I love that business, and that was a great business. But then the gambling sector is $1 trillion industry, but you can't just go, it's $1 trillion industry, and I love that bit of it. That bit of it's gone like backward.
Focus on where the money's going, the rising tide.
I love the industry. Where is the growth? Where is the area of massive expansion? So for instance, like the whole world's turned to America in 2018. The whole world is looking at Brazil now that's just opened up gambling. There's 130 operators that have applied for a license in Brazil. So is Peru going to open up? Where in Asia is going to open up? There's always growth, and focusing on the areas of growth and solving problems in those areas of growth is far better than going, I'm going to be focused on.
Quicker, better, more efficient, because the rising tide's going to take you up with it.
Correct. You want to be part of the area that's growing and trying to see where the industry is going all the time.
It's funny because when you said Bezos started his first company, obviously selling books online, there's unlimited products, there's unlimited books. That was actually so genius, so simple.
Yeah. There's
so many different books and categories, and that's what springboarded everything, that idea. Now, Tom, I could talk about gambling and business with you all day, but obviously we've got to get to the end of the podcast. We're going to ask you some quick fire questions. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the most important skill in your industry today?
Most important? Well, I think if you have the ability to find edge, and you're very analytical and can find an edge on a sport or racing or whatever, there's huge, like most people lose in the gambling sector, betting. And if you can find an edge to beat the market, there is huge upside. So having that analytical, mathematical brain that can understand gambling, it's a very rare skill set, but if you've got that, there's big upside.
If you're left-brainer. Yeah. What's one thing that you're passionate about outside your work?
My family,
kids, you'd say that.
Wife.
What's your favorite travel destination?
My kids like Byron Bay the best. So I guess wherever my kids want to be, they love going to Byron.
What's the most exciting project you're working on right now?
Oh, the most to me, I think there's a business that's actually a listed business called Racing and Sport, and they supply key data to the racing industry. I think racing globally is a very exciting product. In Australia, we know how exciting and what a great product it is, but I think racing can play a real part in the global landscape. So I really like that business. We've obviously invested in it. We've got an option deal in it.
What's your favorite way to spend your weekend?
Well, I complain about it all the time, but I actually love going to my kids' sport on a Saturday. I'm like, it's 7:00 in the morning on a Saturday. I'm like, this is the worst thing in the world, but it's really nice, and you get to spend good time with them.
You do. What's your measure of success in your personal life?
You really measure success how your kids turn out, and you can't control that really, because you can do everything right and things just happen. But I just like, you sort of see your kids and you go like, I just hope that they're happy, and I don't know. That's sort of.
I think that's your legacy.
Legacy.
The way your kids are. Yeah. I think if your kids want to hang around with you when they're older,
that's a good sign.
You've done a good job. Yeah, my brother's kids always want to be with me.
I know I definitely want to hang around with my parents, and they've done a really good job. So hopefully my kids want to as well.
What's your favorite quote you live by?
My grandfather used to always say, everything works out for the best if you let it. And all the like twists and turns, really even the worst bits, and like I've been very blessed so far and lucky in where I come from, background and stuff, but even the worst bits actually are the biggest building blocks. Do you know what I mean?
They're your biggest lessons.
Yeah, your biggest lessons.
The obstacle is the way.
When you go through those trials, you're like, actually, well, I learned this and this happened, and it makes it more interesting anyway. But yeah, he always said, don't worry, everything works out for the best.
When I reflect on your story from starting your business to selling it to becoming CEO to getting your name back, every part you pivoted, and that's a testament to what you just said.
Yeah, you got to keep moving and find ways to grow.
How do you stay productive during long work days? How do you stay on?
I found I know I've got to get to this with the family or pick up my kids or do something. It's like, I've got to focus because I'm not going to be able to do that unless I do it. So that's been great, but I don't know. Just, I like coming to work. So
just get it done.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of your job? You'll have a lot of them, but what's your favorite part?
I think it's just seeing so many interesting new things. It's often when you're running a business, you're making sure everyone's on the same path of just executing on one path, which is really exciting because you're going on hopefully an exciting journey. But with this, we go from one day working on a voice betting solution to like that's based in, let's say, Ireland, to a esports data business in Prague, to a racing and technology business here in Australia. Like they're all different parts of the world doing different things, different mindsets, different ways they work. I find that exciting, just seeing new stuff.
Now, how do you recharge when you're feeling drained? Is there a go-to technique? Is there stress with it? Do you meditate? What is it?
No, I think I normally just read a little bit and fall asleep. I don't know. I sleep every time on a plane. Like I get on a plane, I literally am out straight away.
Last question, from a scale of 1 to 10, how much have you enjoyed being on the podcast?
10. It's great.
Been an absolute pleasure having you, Tom. I was very happy to meet you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.